Hi, my name is Kirsty. I'm a commercial agreement specialist working on the team that manage the Vehicle Charging Infrastructure Solutions DPS agreement, or VCIS for short. The agreement has been live for public sector buyers to use since the 11th of May 2020. Our commercial team supports buyers and suppliers to utilise this agreement. This solution is what we call a dynamic purchasing system, and it's often referred to as a DPS. It's a fully electronic procurement solution. The scope available is wide-ranging, all-encompassing, and flexible to changes in this developing market. There are three funding models available on this agreement: buyer-funded, supplier-funded, and funding model to be decided. The buyer-funded model is where you, the buyer, are using your organisation finances or grant funding from external sources to fund the project. It can also be a combination of the two. This can be either outright purchase or via a lease agreement. Then we've got a supplier-funded model. This is where the supplier will provide the upfront costs for the charging solution. This could still include any grant funding where appropriate. The model could look like a gain share agreement with the buyer, such as a concession model or a no-fee model. Lastly, we've got funding model to be decided, and this is a possible option you may want to take. It's a likely route when the buyer needs charging solutions that may be made available to the general public, but further detail is to be scoped out jointly between the buyer and the supplier. For the most up-to-date grant information, you can visit the Office for Zero Emission Vehicle website, or OZEV for short. The products and services available are organised into broad areas required for your contract. Buyers can select as many or as few as you deem appropriate. The options are installation location. This filter allows the supplier to indicate any geographical parameters they might have in delivery of their services, so some may only operate in certain countries. There's consultancy and feasibility. This provides scope for professional advice to help you understand what you need and the funding options available. There's also groundwork, civil engineering and construction, which encompasses the design, build and delivery of charging infrastructure solutions. Importantly, in scope within this filter is the service where the supplier liaises with the DNO on behalf of yourself, the buyer. There's also hardware, accessories and associated delivery services, covering all charge point equipment and the peripherals, for example, mounting poles and cables. It also includes other linked services, such as the payment solutions and any maintenance and decommissioning. There's software and back office solution, and this is the software which can provide data, enhancing your infrastructure management through the use of analysis. We know how important vehicle charging data is, so the inclusion of this as a separate filter helps us to highlight this where required in the contract. And finally, the filter for full end-to-end service, which covers all of the products and services previously mentioned. This will be combined into a turnkey solution to meet your requirements. We have developed two documents with input from customers, suppliers, and key stakeholders to help you with your procurement and using this agreement. The external stakeholders have included devolved administration areas, the Office for Zero Emission Vehicles, and the Energy Saving Trust. The VCIS buyer guidance document helps you understand how to use the agreement, including more detail on the scope, accessing the system and filtering, developing your specification and competition, and managing your contract with the supplier. The VCIS key considerations document helpfully outlines key areas for you to think about when designing the strategy for your charging infrastructure contract. This includes the scope and strategy setting and linking to your fleet operation and also electricity supply. Both documents are available on the RM6213 agreement webpage. We always welcome feedback from buyers to ensure the guidance is appropriate and fit for purpose, so please support any requests for feedback. As previously mentioned, the procurement approach for this agreement is a dynamic purchasing system, or DPS. Many of you may already be familiar with the workings of a DPS, but some of you may not. So just wanted to highlight the differences between a DPS and a framework. Within public sector buying, we have specific ways in which we can arrange contracts or agreements to comply with regulations and the principles of openness and transparency. The most common types of agreement are regular contracts or framework agreements. A DPS is a relatively new tool made available for public sector. Fundamentally, a DPS is designed to be much more flexible than a framework agreement, allowing new suppliers to apply to join at any time. As this area is a developing and changing market, this DPS is deliberately broad and will allow new innovations to be offered via the agreement. There is no direct award permitted under a DPS, so on each occasion, the buyer will have to define their specification, evaluation criteria, and undertake a competition amongst all capable suppliers. Essentially, you can use this agreement much like any CCS DPS in that you will first define your requirements. You will access the DPS system online and undertake a filtering exercise based on your contract needs, applying your chosen filter for funding model, then selecting your required products and services. You'll then be presented with a short list of suppliers. You can then undertake a normal competition amongst these suppliers, including appropriate valuation, award, and then a supplier debrief. Some customers are required to formally publish notification of award of their contracts, depending on their status and the contract value. The starting point is the supplier registration website and the DPS marketplace. Within this marketplace, you will be able to see all DPSs managed by CCS, including this one for VCIS. From this screen, you can view suppliers, reflecting the list of suppliers already appointed to the DPS. As a buyer, you can use the Access as a Buyer link to review the filters and shortlist suppliers for your competition. The system is designed to be intuitive, with on-screen notes to guide you through, as well as contact details for any technical difficulties you experience. Once you have selected Access as a Buyer, you will be taken to this screen to either log in with an existing supplier registration service account or register for a new account. Simply follow the instructions on screen to complete this action. Once registered and logged in, you will be taken through to the DPS Buyer Access Agreement Terms and Conditions page. It is very important that you review and understand the requirements stipulated in these terms before accepting and confirming. Once you've confirmed, you are able to progress through to the next stage. The roles and responsibilities to make a success of any DPS are spread across the buyer, supplier, and CCS. For yourselves as a buyer, you must ensure that your procurement practices are fair, open, and transparent. You are responsible for defining your specification and how you wish to construct your contract. You must also provide feedback to all suppliers who have been involved in bidding for your contract. For suppliers, they must comply with both the overarching terms of the DPS and also with any respective contracts agreed with the buyer. And CCS plays an ongoing role in managing the DPS for appointment of suppliers, continued compliance checking, providing help and guidance to both buyers and suppliers alike, as well as being a formal escalation point for any arising issues. Thank you for your time. We hope you found this overview of the agreement useful. We also hope that you are now encouraged to proceed to access the VCIS DPS for your requirements. If you have any questions, please get in touch.